Want to volunteer
Yeah.
and read off your question, go ahead and jump in, or I can, just read them off. If no one is volunteering, I'll read off the written questions. So yeah, why don't you go reintroduce yourself a little bit?
So my name is Carlos Maldonado. I grew up in the Pico neighborhood section of Santa Monica. Since I was like 11, 12 years old, I started getting in trouble, mostly by smoking weed, I think, and hanging around with older guys. And then that led me to hanging around with, like, my mother would clean homes, and she was never really there after school. So I think that led me down the path of, like, seeking my own kind of, recreation on the streets. And with doing so, I would hang around with older kids that would, like, talk me into, like, stealing and stuff like that. And from there, I got really involved, like, with hip hop. I used to be a popper, like a pop locker. Like the break dance is really from the East Coast, and the popping is from the West Coast. So I was more like of a popper, But I did break a little bit, but I wasn't the best at that. I was more like really into popping, So sometimes somebody told me once, man, like, the first gang that you join when you're growing up in the streets, is like the cool kids gang in school. And then the next gang, they said, is a breakdancing gang. And then you join a street gang. And like, this guy's telling me this in prison. And then you join state gang, because now in state you got the North and South among the Hispanics. With that being said, I guess I started selling weed. I would jump on a bus and go down Pico all the way to like Pico and Hoover and buy weed over there from like people on the streets. Like mainly at that time, a lot of Central Americans. They call them traqueteros, like the code, like, the key word there is track. So it was like where they would hustle, and I would go there and get like 20 bags of marijuana, like little dime bags, and bring them back to the neighborhood and sell them little dime bags and make a profit and get to smoke for free. But yeah, I think before that, we were like into stealing stereos a lot, still breaking into cars, stealing stereos, stealing cars. I'm laughing about it, but it's not funny. But sometimes when as a criminal, like when we relive the stories that we tell and think about them, they're kind of humorous to us, especially like the crimes we committed as youngsters, really, as preteens and stuff. I remember one time we were walking down the street, and we had broken into so many cars on this one street that like the street glittered. It looked like we're going to the liquor store. I think we were on acid too. So, the lights and everything mess with your eyes a little bit. And me and a couple of my buddies were going to get some more beer. I was about 15, 16 at the time. So as we're walking up the street to go to the liquor store, and it's around midnight or 11, it's dark. But the street lights, they're like shining down on the pavement, on the blacktop, and that is so embedded with glass from different colored tints, from different cars that we busted into and stole stereos that, walking up and being on acid, it was like I was walking to Emerald City on Wizard of Oz. So everything was like glistening, and that's basically how I started being a criminal, from smoking weed. And then once I seen like the potential of, making money selling weed, I kind of got into like drug dealing a little bit older. I think when I was 14, I used to sell crack cocaine. I started selling crack cocaine. And and it just progressed,
Does anybody want to volunteer your discussion question to get the dialogue going? Kyle had his hand up, and then I think on this side, there's a few, but yeah.
I was gonna ask,
Yes,
how did you go from like selling crack cocaine to where you are right now?
From keep selling crack cocaine? Well, what do you mean to where I'm at now? Like from
Coming and talking to us.
Well, he's a good friend of mine, and we always have really intelligent conversations, especially on his part. But so he asked me to come in, and if I would be willing to come in and chop it up a little bit, and I like to feel like I do something productive, once in a while. But from the point of, I think it's also like being in prison for so long, you start to look at things differently, because if you would have caught me before I went to prison, like if, especially on my last term that I did so much time, I was probably still pretty ignorant, I was pretty still like hard-headed and I have a lot more like calmness to my spirit now compared to the way I was before. Because they call me Diablo, and I can actually say I was a pretty wicked person, you know. I still am, but not all the way.
So that speaks to one of the questions here. Do you think there could have been something, whether it be a person or an event, that could have kept you from fully embracing and integrating into the gang life? How different has life been, if at all, since having kids? Do you think the prison system allows for rehabilitation? Like, how did it play a role in your life?
I think it's just a matter of like the person wants to like not continue visiting that suffering, you know, because I had kids before I went to prison, and there's one of them right there, but I left him when he was like 2, and I came back, he was, he was already like 12, but I think it's just a lot of self-reflection and a lot of suffering, you know, kind of breaks that old ego of trying to be like, try to be a Billy Badass on the street and trying to be always flossing and having things, you know. I mean, we all like to have nice things. Yeah, basically just a lot of self-reflection and like a lot of hurt, you know, and I wanted to keep going back and forth because I was in and out, but before it was always like 2 years, 3 years, a few months. So it was just like it was basically like a party, just like that little thing I did earlier. Like I'll go back and catch up with the homies. Like there's guys that are so used to going back and forth to prison. Like I remember doing a violation, and this guy left me his boom box, his radio, and he was doing a violation. I was doing a violation, and when he was paroling or going home, he told me, he said, how long are you going to be here for, man? I said, I still got like 6 months. And he said, okay. And he was an older guy. He's a Chicano, you know, he was a heroin addict. And he said, oh, 6 months? He said, all right, cool. Hold on to that radio, man. Because let me see, 6 months, he started doing like some figures. He said, yeah, I should be back by then, you know. And I said, how you know you're going to come back to this prison? He said, because I've been coming here doing violations for the last 10 years or something like that. So, I mean, I never wanted to get to that point. Like, I got some tattoos, a lot of tattoos on my body, but when I first used to see my older homies, they would have a gang of tattoos from being ex-convicts, and I'd be like, man, I don't want to be like them. I said, I'm going to just get me a little block S Sam, like an S right here and an M over here blocked up, and I'm cool. And I got that. That was like my first tattoo, but then going to prison, you know, you keep getting more and more till you become that person you didn't want to become.
Raise your hand if you want to volunteer a discussion question. If not, I'm just going to read these off. Raise your hand if you want to volunteer a discussion question. If not, I'm just going to read these off. I
was wondering, what is the first thing you wanted to do at the end of your last bid, and was it different than the first thing you wanted to do at the end of your other ones? Like, is it always different, or?
Yeah, because this time I was kind of looking forward to seeing my family, whereas to before, I was more looking forward to seeing the homies, you know?
I was wondering, what is the first thing you wanted to do at the end of your last bid, and was it different than the first thing you wanted to do at the end of your other ones? Like, is it always different, or?
Yeah, because this time I was kind of looking forward to seeing my family, whereas to before, I was more looking forward to seeing the homies, you know? I think last time I mentioned, I mentioned like every ex-convict, they fantasize about that day they get to go home, you know? Like, getting out of prison is almost like the feeling is so good. It's like the equivalent kind of is like, for a person that's never been in prison, getting out of prison it's like for a free man dying and going to heaven, kind of, you know? Because there's so much misery, man, and like inhumane conditions in there. Especially when they punish you, put you in a shoe, like in a secured housing unit, in a hole, what they call the hole. Because even though you're in prison, you're still among your peers. You got homies, you know what I'm saying? Especially being a Mexican, you know what I mean, or a black guy, you know what I'm saying? It's like our family in there. White guys too, you know what I'm saying? But just more so because it's like kind of like being with your family. But when they take you from that setting of the prison, the main line, and put you in the shoe, solitary confinement, you feel like you got rearrested all over again, and you know, they took you from this society that you were part of and like extracted you and then punished you. So it's like a double prison, especially because you spend a lot of time in your own mind, and you just go over everything in your life and all the hurt and all the, you know, just all the things that you hope for, and it's like a dream that's every day it gets away from you further and further. But I used to try to keep my mind occupied, because I remember on the main line, like on the yard when I'm not being punished in a solitary, I used to walk on the prison track, and you know, you're so bored in there that you count your footsteps. I wonder how many footsteps it takes me to make this lap, you know? So then I said, I wonder how many footsteps it takes to do a mile. So I knew the numbers of that. So in my prison, in my solitary confinement cell, I would pace like 4, 5, 6 steps and count them till I did a mile or two. And then I would read at a certain time and things like that. But other guys, they would just be in there like losing their mind. Like I remember I had a neighbor that told me, "Hey Diablo," he was talking to me through the events, telling me to cover my mirror because he felt like demons were coming out through the mirror. And another guy said he had a dream that he saw this Cuban guy that was on the yard with us, like on the main line. He said that dude shapeshifted into a crow and flew to his wife's house and had sex with her. So now he's telling me that he's going, when he gets out of the shoe, that he's going to stab this guy.
When you're in prison, like how hard is it to get in trouble? Like how hard is it to stay out of trouble?
How hard is it to stay out of trouble?
Yeah.
It's kind of hard, but you know, especially being a gang member, because you're expected a certain behavior from you, you know. Like for instance, like if a homie gets if a homie gets in an altercation with another inmate or a cop or whatever, just because I'm there, I have to be involved and I'm part of that group, you know. So, you know, I've seen some police officer. He got like, I think I talked about it last time. He was trying to detain one guy that was coming back in from the yard from recreation into the buildings, and he was drinking. So the cop wanted to stop him, and when he noticed he was, you know, inebriated and he could smell the alcohol, he wanted to take him to the shoe. But another older officer said, "Nah, just let him go to sleep, man. Go in your cell and go to sleep." But this guy was a new CO, correctional officer, so he was like trying to make a point, and he's like, "Nah, he's going to the shoe." So he went on and started grabbing the guy and tried to get him on the floor to cuff him up, and they started fighting. And then his partner that was with him, that was drinking with him, he joined in, and then they took his flashlight and they broke all kinds of bones on him. They dragged him in the cell and you know, really beat him really bad. So it's very easy to get in trouble in prison, because sometimes you have to take care of stuff, you know, for the group in general.
How was it like getting reintegrated back into society, like after going there?
It was hard, man, because like I talked about before, when I went to prison, it was like the internet was where you plug up to the phone jack, and like I didn't really know how to find a job, and they told me to go to a work source. It was like this what would you call it? Like a organization that helps
Trade
you find,
school or?
It's not a trade school. It's a place that they refer you to jobs. And
is it like a temp agency?
Yeah, like a temp agency, and they got computers in there. And so I went in there to the work source, and I was like, all right, I want a job. So they said, okay, well, get on the computer and look for a job, something you can do. And I was like, okay, well, I don't really know how to use a computer. How am I supposed to get a job? Like, it was really hard, you know? And then even just like the way you dress, I think him and his mother brought me some clothes, right? And I'm still used to dressing like a gang member. I would wear oversized pants. So when his mom told me that when they came to see me, I said, give me some like size 46 pants, or like whatever I was used to wearing. Like in jail, when I would watch commercials, like before I got out, I would make fun of like skinny jeans. I was like, man, you know, I'd be like, man, I ain't wearing no damn skinny jeans. But look, I wear them now, you know what I mean? but his mom was like, damn, he must have gained a lot of weight. These pants are huge. But it is very difficult, bro. Just the way people react to you. It's hard, man. You're happy to be free, but you got like way more obstacles now. It's very hard, bro, to be, you know, to be freshly paroled, you know.
How did coming back like affect your like social life though?
It was kind of sad, man, because a lot of my homies, like, were gone, you know, they're dead or they're in jail, and like they're locked up, and I'm hoping to see them. Like I said, every convict that's getting out of jail, like the day before, you can't sleep. You're like playing over, like say, you know how it is, like you in your hood, like say you were gone for a month or two. You're like, oh, when I get back, I'm gonna see the homies. They're gonna be sitting on this block, and they're gonna greet me. We're gonna smoke some bud and get high, you know. But a lot of times I would, you know, that's not the case. I got out and it was just empty, you know, the street was empty. I'm like, damn, man. I remember somebody was like, I went looking for one of my homies when I first got out. I knocked on his door, and Sana, who's, you know, related to Ulai and them dudes you were talking about earlier, and I seen his dad, and his dad said, he said, man, what you want? Like, his dad's older now. And I said, is Sana here? And he's like, nah, he ain't here, get the fuck out of here. And I was like, I said, he probably don't know who I am. He don't remember, because he loved me like a son. You know, this family loved me. They know me since I was a baby. And I said, all right. I told him in Spanish, Zígale que Carlos vino a buscarlo, you know, that I came looking for him. And he said, Carlos, what Carlos? And I said, Carlos, Esperanza's son, my mom. So he said, that's you? He said, Mocho, that's you? I said, yeah. And he said, God damn. He said, man, what you doing around here, man? Everybody in jail and dead.
So what was what led to
I
your
just came back to life.
recidivism, like going back to jail after doing time, you know, your first few times?
I just kept being a fool, you know, and wanting to make easy money, and you know, at one point I tried to go to college, you know, to SMC, and I remember we went to go play football with another gang, you know, like our rival enemies, but at this time there was like a peace treaty, so we went to the projects over in Culver City playing football with them guys, and at this point I was going to SMC. I was actually studying psychology. Maybe that's why I came over here, because I like psychology. But and these guys rolled up in a badass whip, you know, at that time. I think it was like a Acura Legend or something fresh, you know, it might have been, but it had sounds, just like I always like to roll on lowriders that had sounds. And they came through bumping and chilling and like doing it, you know. And my homeboy Clavo said, he said, hey, Lowe's, man, fuck that college shit, man. You gotta know, you gotta do what you do best, man. You gotta get your serve on, man. That's what you're known for. And he was like, it gave me something to think about, you know, and like, it kind of like just made me think and made me long for those days and want to be flossing, you know. Everybody want to have some, you know, like our motivations in the ghetto were different than other kids, you know, like.
Did the material incentives, like the opportunities to make money, override like any fear of punishment by like the law?
Yeah, I mean, it did, because obviously, you know, I kept doing that. I got convicted and charged with being a career criminal because I was willing to take that chances. That's why you're hearing these rap songs, they call them penitentiary chances, you know. They know that the risk is high, but, you know, guys want to live at their peak, you know, and take that risk. But, yeah.
That's one of the questions that came up here is like, did you weigh the pros and cons before, back in the day when, you know, you was doing a crime, or was it more of an emotional rush?
Oh yeah, you know, but sometimes, especially like in the gangbanging stuff, which I really don't talk about too much, but that motivation is very high, you know, like when they kill one of your homies, you know, like you mentioned in the book, like Ulai, like that was one of my loved ones, and like, yeah, but the part about like hustling and making money, you know, that's a really motivating factor, because, you know, it's hard to be out here on the streets, you know, and like, especially in Southern California, it's so expensive. And yeah, but I always weighed the pros and cons, but I wasn't too bright. I didn't really, especially when I was younger, I didn't think too much.
We see a lot in like media where like a certain character like gets into gang life and it's always like, oh, why not just like get out or just quit? So like from your personal experience, how easy was it to get into that life, and how difficult was it to, I guess, like try to like separate yourself from that lifestyle once you've like integrated in?
Yeah, it depends at what point in your life, you know, because if I would have joined, it was kind of easy, I guess. Like if, you know, a lot of kids that grow up in these type of neighborhoods, you know, like if you're not part of the neighborhood gang, that you looked at like you're abnormal, you know, you kind of like, the other kids will try to like punk you and stuff. But leaving the gang, I know a guy that got shot. He was from my clique, and he was a little younger than me. But he was in the gang, and he was you know, conducting gang activity with the little homies and all that. And he ended up getting shot like a month or two into his membership. And when he was in the hospital, he told the homies, like, I'm hanging up the gloves. Like, he didn't want to gang bang no more. So the other homies, they like, that's a no-no right there, you know. So the other homies, they started giving him the blues, you know. They beat him up, they stabbed him, they jumped him out, and told him not to show his face around there, and just, you know, really like stigmatized him, you know. And I kind of was like still with that program, because like if my homies say this dude ain't no good, then he ain't no good, you know. They're doing it, they're saying it for a reason. So I kind of caught myself when I got out of prison, you know, and I'm already an older man and stuff at that point. I'm not a youngster no more, but I seen this guy that kind of let him come back and kick it a little bit. And he came up to me and shook my hand, but he tried to shake my hand, but I just gave him a dap, you know. But this other homie of mine that's friends with him, he said, hey, Diablo, he told me, he said, hey, homie, I seen when you shook all the homies' hands the correct way, you know, the way we shake hands, you know, just the regular handshake. He said, but when this guy came up to, we'll call him John. He said, when John came up to you, he tried to shake your hand, you just gave him a dap. And I said, and so what? I was like, yeah, and he was like, I know why you did that. I said, how come? He said, because, you know, he's labeled like he's no good or something like that. I said, I didn't say all that, bro. I just like, I don't really know the dude, but I just heard some stuff like, you know, I don't be shaking nobody's hand or calling them dog if they ain't, you know. And I was still in that mindset, but as time went on and he would interact with us once in a while, I was like, man, I gave, you know, I let, that type of mentality kind of left me, but that's when I was first out of prison, you know. Certain way, like, it's hard to give up some of those beliefs, you know. It's like your religion, and it's very difficult to give up some of those beliefs, but I could see that with time I have let go of a lot of that stuff, you know.
How was like the getting employed out there, getting a criminal record? Was it like
it's hard. It was hard. I ended up going to Homeboy Industries and go to school for to install solar panels, but I couldn't get a job, you know. And then I was at the like parole office, the federal probation office, because feds get probation, not parole. And I remember this guy telling me, you know, this older black gentleman that had been in the system for a while, he overheard me talking with somebody, and I was like, man, I can't get a job nowhere, man, because I always put down that I've been incarcerated, but I'm an ex-convict, and they never hire me. And then this guy told me, well, don't say that you've been incarcerated. I said, yeah, but then if I don't, I'm gonna get a job and I'm gonna start working, and then 2-3 weeks down the line, they're gonna give me the boot, you know? So this other man, this older gentleman, he tells me, he said, listen, man, don't tell him you was locked up because it's federal. So federal doesn't show up. Federal crimes don't show up, your federal jacket, unless you apply to be like something, you know, like a government job. He said, and then another guy was like, man, I ain't gonna work, fuck that. He said, I'm just applying for SSI and get some kind of free check. And he was of that mentality, you know. So you hear a lot of different kind of advice. And I'm like, man, I ain't gonna do that, you know.
Mm-hmm. Was there like any like gang like hierarchy, and then how do like gangs go about like, I guess, recruiting younger generations? Like, was that something that was like sought out, like, oh, let's like, I guess, try to integrate like a younger person into the gang lifestyle? Or? Like in Chicano gangs, there's really like not a hierarchy, but there is, but it's like unwritten, you know. It's more like, you know, just like you're gonna respect certain guys a certain way, but it's not like the Italian mob where they got the consigliere, the soldier, the boss, you know, like the captains. It's a little different, but I mean, on the West Coast, Mexicans are like the mob, though, you know, because you know, because all the cartel things, you know, all that trickles up here, and it's, you know.
But as far as gangs, it's not really in Chicano gangs, it's not a hierarchy. I think black gangs are pretty much kind of the same too. They got categories like a G, a OG, or you say G, OG, a baby. You know, they got, you know, we kind of do that too. Like there might be two dudes named, for instance, Speedy. So I got Lil Speedy, Speedy. You know what I mean, Big Speedy. Like I remember at one time we had like 3 dudes named Weddle. So one we called him Little Weddle, the other one Big Weddle, and then there was a Huerito, and then we had one we called him Whopper with cheese, Weddle Whopper with cheese, because he was a wino. He was like the oldest one. He was a wino, and he would stand outside the liquor store across the street from Burger King and say, "Hey, homie." He said, "Hey, homie, you got dollars so I could get Whopper with cheese?" But really, he wanted to get a bottle of wine, so we named him Weddle Whopper with cheese. When I joined a gang and seen what it was doing to me, like, I remember waking up at like 2, 3 in the morning in the L.A. County jail and listening to these older guys talk. I was in my early 20s, and I'm listening to these dudes talk like a couple of tiers down, like at 4 or 5 in the morning. It's really still very quiet. You know how you wake up at 3, 4 in the morning and your thoughts are really like, they're really fresh, and they're like, whatever you're thinking about seems like you really like get in a pensive mood about it. So I remember hearing these guys talking to each other with the gang lingo and all that, with the, you know, the way that we talk and the language, and I started noticing like that we have like our own language really, and our own slang and all that, and I'm like, damn, dude, when I was a couple of years ago, I didn't want to be this far into this shit, going in and out of prison, and like I started listening to them talk about their case, how they're facing life and all this for a drive-by shooting, and like they're discussing the jury, and and I'm like, damn, dude, I'm becoming more and more entrenched in this, man. I don't want that to be me at the end of the day. It ended up becoming me in a way. Luckily, I'm not like the guy you had on the phone you were telling me, but I could have been. But yeah, my homeboy Speedy used to like to recruit them youngsters, like, and I never try to do that, because in my apartment buildings, sometimes some of the youngsters, even my own cousins, would want to follow me, like, where you going? Like when I would start heading down the alley to go to the street that we hang out on, he would want to follow me. It would have been easy for me to say, come on, man, and had him jumped in. Like, fools find pride in that, but like, man, I'm not going to bring nobody into this misery, you know? At least I did that, but I got some homies that they love to recruit them, you know, and if they were no good, they'll be more than happy to beat them up, stab them, kick them out, you know?
Magically, I guess, go back and like maybe like grow up in like a wealthier neighborhood with like positive influences and things like that. Do you think that you would, or do you feel like your experiences, like you value them more now, like who you are now as a person?
That's a good question. You know, I value my experience. You know, I'm proud to say that, you know, whatever I did, and I handled it in the way I did. But honestly, if I could do it all over again, I would be a geek, you know, because ain't nothing wrong with being a geek, you know what I mean? That's just, from my observation, that's what we call, you know, people that are doing the right things, or studious, you know. Because later on, we want to be studious anyways, you know, but if I could do it all over again, you know, I would do it the right way and get that license to steal instead of just doing it just the way I did it, you know. But it's not really stealing. I just got that from a mob figure named Lucky Luciano. He said if he could do it all over again, he said he would go to school and get the license to steal, because, you know, when you're making millions, you kind of steal, you know what I mean? So he meant it in a positive way, because, you know, a person that takes care of business, and, you know, they're happier at the end of the day. They got their family always with them. You know, I've always been alone my whole life, you know, and it hurts, you know. It's sad. I think, to me, the greatest thing a man can attain on this earth is a family, you know. What better thing is it than to have your loved ones next to you, your heart and your theirs, you know? And being a gang member, it's not like that, you know. I used to think it was the coolest job in the world to be a gang member, you know. I'm with my buddies all day long. You know, when I was young, we were always together, making money, don't work, you know what I mean, smoking weed, getting high. I thought that was cool, like, man, this is a cool-ass job, but it's not at the end of the day. It's just an illusion.
What's a misconception about gang life that doesn't accurately reflect the experience of those involved? Like, what are
I would say stuff like on TV they show us stealing an old lady's purse and stuff. I never did no shit like that, you know. I actually feel like we protected the like people that lived in the neighborhood from stuff like that or getting their house broke into. But that's just my, corrupt beliefs. But I mean, I'm not gonna lie, there are some gang members, but there's some non-gang members too, because they're on drugs. They probably would steal from an old lady, But on TV, they always make us look like we do shit like that. Like, I never did nothing like that, But other misconceptions is that we're not human beings,
So, did you ever like grow up religious, super religious, or?
Kind of, because I went to Catholic school when I was a little kid. And I didn't really believe, to tell you the truth, until I would start getting these experiences where I couldn't move, and when I was like going to sleep, and I would like feel frozen, and I believe it was because of all the bad things I was doing, because I do really believe in the spiritual world, and I believe it was something holding me or something trying to take my wind, because I couldn't breathe until somebody told me, said, call out in the name of Jesus. So that really enforced like my belief in good and evil. But when I was a little kid, I didn't really believe. I thought it was a fairy tale, kind of.
So
I did.
Whenever you like, maybe if you like deal drugs or something, like whenever you got like the monetary gain from it, did you ever think like this is like God rewarding me, or
God what?
rewarding, like it's a reward?
Warning?
Yeah.
Oh, warning me. Whenever I would make money and like come up, I didn't think it was God warning me. I thought it was the devil rewarding me.
Or do you mean like getting locked up and for crime? That was God warning.
Did you mean
God's
like
warning?
when I profit off of drug dealing? Did I feel like God was warning?
So I was speaking. I think it's called Vader.
Yeah.
What
This
is it?
perspective, where if you do something and you get like a gain from it, like say like one day you like wake up super rich, and like you were gaining like maybe status or something like that,
Yeah, status is part of it. Yeah.
So let me see if I get this right. So there's the original, one of the original forms of Christianity, Calvinism, is one of the ideas. Calvinism, one of the first Protestant Christian religions, not Catholic. This is like Christian
The Christian sect.
denominations, and they believe that making money is a sign of you
Being
doing,
prosperous.
fulfilling God's will. That when you make money, regardless of how you make it, but for them it was hard work, just working, that's a sign that you're fulfilling God's will. So,
Well, if I made it hard working, I would believe it was God giving me abundance, but I know better than that. I know I was doing the devil's work, And like, this one guy in the wheelchair once told me, like, man, when I was out there, I used to trade dope for this and that and all this stuff. He was telling me all these material things. And then I said, yeah, you got that on the devil's credit card. Look where we're at now, For me, that was like the only choice I had at a certain point, I wish I had a better option, but I didn't. I could have if I would have had a good male role model, but I never had a dad or anyone to speak to me. And it's very simple. All you got to do is talk to the children, and I look back and I was like, man, if the right male role model would have spoke to me, I'm pretty sure I would have listened to him and like, kind of like, keep telling me the truth about the will to survive and your perseverance and studying. How you're not going to see it right now, but you'll see it in the long run, and you're going to be better off, But gang members just like live from day to day. Like, it doesn't really matter about the future. When I was a little kid, I would see them how they were dressed differently. Like, they were all G'd up, and they were always in a group. They kind of commanded respect and fear from the people. Like my own mom, and they're like, no, go this way, the cholos over there, or whatever, So I kind of like looked up to them. And then the writing, the graffiti, I remember seeing a question about graffiti, but when I was a little kid, I used to see the graffiti like the gang, the gang, what do you call it, trademark, which is, the acronym like SM 17th Street, where I grew up on 17th. So I remember taking a paintbrush and just writing the SM on the wall of the building that I lived at, not knowing that it's a gang thing or anything. I just thought it was like part of the design or something of the neighborhood. I wake up and see like my enemies came and did a big ass mural on, or not a mural, but like some big ass letters on 1 block away from where I kick it at, And I'll be like, damn, I was here last night too. They could have caught me slipping, you know? So.
This is a little bit like more off topic of a question, but having experienced the prison life and the conditions that come with it, what do you think of what is happening with this presidential administration in Alcatraz and the living conditions of the detainees? Like, can you compare prison conditions to what they're going through right now? I don't know if you...
I've been in some chicken coops. They got cells, they got bars, I've been in some chicken coops. Like, that sounds like real country to me, that Alcatraz.
They
Like,
don't have, like, sanitation, air, ways to get rid of it.
I've been in some kind of inhumane place, like when I was in New Mexico, like they had all the toilet seats on the wall, and like a female CO could walk in and they could see you on, using the commode, you know what I mean? There was an African guy, and he would pay some other guys to hold up a sheet while he would not put his butt on the toilet. He would actually put his feet on the toilet and squat, because he was a very clean guy. He was a Nigerian guy. Cool dude, but like, to me that's kind of inhumane. Like the showers, like they could walk in and look at you in the shower naked, or but that, and the food also, like when they would punish us, they would like feed us, like you would get an egg sandwich, but the egg looked like it was a bird, the little birds when they're real flat, like hardly, like them peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, like they'll really restrict your diet, Sucks. I've been in a hole, like in a solitary confinement where there was no toilet, just a hole on the floor, Like I've been in some inhumane conditions, but that place there sounds like like some third world stuff,
Yeah.
Have you taken any like lessons from being in jail and like being in a gang into real life, and has it helped you? Like, what have you learned?
Yeah, like to keep your word, like just, because not everything about gangs is just like, negative and violent. A lot of, it teaches you how to keep your word. It teaches you about brotherhood. A certain code, like don't be threatening people. Just if you're gonna do something, do it. Like just different little stuff that made me a man. Like I said, I don't regret nothing that I've done. I'm kind of I've been through some situations where I didn't rat, I didn't tell on somebody,
Do you think like the trademarks and like the nicknames and that like brotherhood and sense of loyalty, would you like consider that like tactics to, I guess, make like the gang life look more enticing, and then also make it harder for someone who's already in it to leave, just with that whole like, oh, you don't want to betray the loyalty?
Yeah, I think it does eventually, but as being a little kid and just having those nicknames, we picked them up a lot from cartoons. All them old gang nicknames that like Mexicans use, like Speedy and Droopy and all. They're all these old characters from the cartoons, and I think it just starts off like a little, like when you be roasting each other, like, man, you got big ass ears like Speedy Gonzalez, or like. Well, I think they start off as being endearing, but later on, gangs probably did use those to like institutionalize the gang life and those rules and everything that goes along with it. So that's interesting, because I never thought about it like that. That's very interesting.
Out of the people that you grew up with, how many of them didn't end up in the same life or scenario as you?
Just one. I don't know if you were here last time, but Oscar de la Torre, the guy that was here, he grew up in the same situation as me, even worse, because I grew up as an only child. He had like 4 or 5 brothers and sisters, and he told me that, and he lived in an apartment building where we used to chill at. I didn't live in that apartment building. I lived a couple blocks away, but his window and his walls had been shot at so many times when they would try to come shoot at us. But besides that, he like really like worked hard, because he went to college, and he's my only homie that really was successful like that I grew up with in the hood like that. And this guy, he told me that they used to have to take turns, because he had like 3, 4 brothers and sisters. I think it was a 2-bedroom apartment where he lived at, and they would have to take turns sleeping in a bathtub. One of them would sleep in a bathtub. Imagine trying to study and all that and sleep in a bathtub, or study in the bathroom. I don't really know it the full extent, but he had it tough.
What do you think made him successful?
Just something, some willpower that he has in his heart, something, you know, you want to think gang members are the tough ones, but we're probably the weaker ones because we just fall for the, you know what I'm saying, the easy, just following the other guys, you know?
Yeah, another question? Oh, okay. I guess a common theme in a lot of these questions is asking, like, do you think the prison system, policing system is effective? Like, did it actually rehabilitate any?
The average mentality of guys in prison like a third grader, you know? Most of them got, you know, if you take it upon yourself to better yourself, you will. Because, like, I think your boy takes some courses in there, right? Yeah. I mean, I think you have to, like, have the will on your own, but don't get me wrong, there's a lot of smart brothers in jail, you know? But a lot of them are ignorant, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of them, they got, like, the mentality of, like, a third grader, you know? Like, I had a cellmate that he liked to feed the pigeons and stuff. He was a trip. He would feed the pigeons, and they would come to our windows, and they would, you know, they would poop all over the window, but that stuff becomes like fine dust, and then you breathe it in. He would, like, try to feed them and set little traps. He was a weird dude. He burned up an abortion clinic because this girl he was in love with had aborted his child, so he thought he would stop her by burning up the abortion clinic. He was a big old dude too, and he was like a little kid. He started doing a collage, and he would have a Mercedes-Benz symbol in there. He had Lindsay Lohan, I think, picture in there, and then this other actress picture in there, and then he had knives and stuff on the collage. I'm like, Baca, what you doing, man? And he said, oh, it's from my comic book I'm working on. And he said, well, who's this? I was trying to figure out the character. He called one polar bear or bipolar bear, because he said it was his ex-girlfriend that would offer to have sex with him, and then she wouldn't have sex with him. He'll get to the motel, and she wouldn't show up, or she wouldn't want to have sex. So he named her Bipolar Bear. And I was like, is this the girl you got pregnant? He said, yeah. She drove a Mercedes, right? And I said, oh, now I know why the Mercedes in there. And he started reading the comic book. And then I'm like, it's like a weird comic, like an evil, you know? And I'm like, so what happens at the end? Does Bipolar Bear die in the story? Like, yeah, she dies a horrible death. And I'm like, man, I'm wondering what this dude's gonna do when he get out. But he burned an abortion clinic, and he would get support from all kinds of people. He would get a gang of letters. You know, I'll be in there lonely as hell waiting for a letter, like, man, I hope I get a letter today. And he'll get a gang of letters from people that are anti-abortion. And I'll be like, hey, Baca, man, who'll be writing you all them letters, man? And he said, oh, man, just people that support anti-abortion. I'm not about that. And he would be all mad. I said, well, write them back, man. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you get a pen pal or something. I said, shit, they'll send you some money, Baca. You know what I'm saying? We'll be eating good. I said, let me reply to him. I'll pretend I'm me. And he was from New Mexico, and his buddies came in and talked to him one day, because he was a big dude. And they came in and asked him, they said, hey, man, you from New Mexico? He was like, yeah. He said, you going to run with the 505? That's their clique. You going to run with the 505? He said, I'll run with you guys, but if you guys ask me to stab somebody, I ain't gonna do it. He was big as hell and scary. And I said, what's up, Baca? He said, he said, yeah, some guy was looking at me in the hallway. He was like a little kid, I'm telling you, but I liked him, but he was cool. But he said, I don't stare at nobody for more than 3 seconds or they want to fight. And I said, Baca, man, you big as a house, man. They want to fight with you. But he was a trip, man.
Do you think prison systems in other countries are actually, like, they rehabilitate?
I believe they try to.
And they don't, like, get, like, second, third, fourth offenders, you know, back in jail? Do you think? I don't really know what I'm saying, but I guess can you compare the American system to other, like, prison systems in other countries?
Yeah, because I used to talk to this Canadian guy. He said, man, we can have $1,600 worth of stereo equipment, TV, video games, books, like in single man cells.
Yeah.
Like, man, I should have went to Canada and did that shit. But I believe that they want to better their people because they actually probably believe they want the best for their people probably. But I feel like in the United States, they just lock up like mostly like Black and Hispanic people. I don't think they really give a damn about us, you know, about our future, you know. Like, And don't get me wrong, there's some rough ass white boys in there too. I knew some Hell's Angels, man. Them dudes, you know. I was watching Gangland one time, you know that show Gangland, and they were showing it's like a documentary about gangs on the History Channel, and we were watching this episode about the Hell's Angels and the Mongols going at it, and then they show this guy beating somebody with a hammer. And like one of the Hells Angels beating this Mongol dude with a hammer, and them shooting in the casino. They had a big rumble in a hotel in Vegas. And then I heard, oh no, Calvin was a guy that was with me, the Hells Angel. He was shooting at some Mongols. And I heard another guy say, "Hey Calvin, how come you didn't hit him with your hammer?" He's like, "He was too far away, man." And I was like, "Calvin, that's you?" And it was him. He's like, "Yeah, that was me, bro." And he's the nicest guy in the world. He was real polite. "Hey, how you doing, sir? Good morning." Like, he was real chill, you know. I seen him in that documentary. They got him on video doing all that.
Kind of a follow-up a little bit about what you said, like they don't care about you, and also
I feel like they don't. I know they don't.
Have you
Especially look at the TV.
Have you seen COs like try to make it, and also the question about staying out of trouble while you're in jail. Have you seen COs or prison? Have you seen COs purposely try to set inmates up so that they stay in and like don't like fuck up their parole or whatever, like fuck up their parole hearing?
Like try to help them, you mean?
No, like set them up to get them to stay inside.
I never really seen nothing like that, but I've seen some COs like set up guys to get beat down or something, because sometimes they deal drugs too, and they bring drugs in, and like, but like on the street here, I remember one time we were hanging out on a Sunday morning, and the cops came around, and you know, we used to have this rivalry with a Crip gang in Santa Monica. They're called the Graveyard Crips, and you know, they homies. I grew up with a lot of them, but at one point we were at each other's throat. And I remember one morning the cops came and said, "Hey man, that's fucked up. The Graveyards crossed you guys out on 20th Street." So we went to 20th Street behind that Burger King, and we started crossing them out, and dissing them and crossing them out. And then some lady poked her head out the window and said, hey, they didn't cross you guys out. The police did that this morning. You know what I mean? And then they went and told us so we could start going at it with these dudes, you know? So, yeah, they do that in jail too. I'm really not too much aware about too many cases, but I've seen them set up guys to get smashed behind like drugs and stuff like that, or even for like sometimes they would tell us like which one was a child molester, you know, because even they didn't like that.
So we're talking a lot in this class about like self-surveillance and like having to basically like check your own behavior because you're never really sure if someone's watching, and you're talking a lot about like LAPD, like always like stalking around and messing around with stuff and surveillance and stuff. How does that kind of mess with your like self-perception and the way that you like?
Not really, because, well, we didn't really have social media like that, but even if we did, like that's considered like a PC move, we call a PC move like a protective custody move, like that. I mean,
telling on yourself.
Nah, like threatening people through a TV, through a screen, you know. That's called like being a cell warrior. Like in prison, your own homies will smash you if you be threatening people, like acting up inside of a cell, like somebody walking by and you woofing at them, you know what I mean? Like, "Man, fuck you, I'll fuck you up, motherfucker, fuck your hood, fuck this." You know, just yelling through a cell door where they can't get to you, you can't get to them. That's looked down upon, you know?
Christian?
I'm curious about like drug use among like the people in your gang, and then like how that translates to when you go into prison. Like, I know there's still ways to get drugs in prison.
Yeah.
So would you say if you have like an addiction to like a hard substance that continues in prison and you go back to it when you get out?
For most guys, I think it does continue. You know, they have to have it and they'll keep, you know, they'll do whatever it takes to get it. And that leads to a lot of guys PCing up, just like I was saying earlier. Like they'll owe money on the yard and they'll have a certain time to pay the money and they can't pay it. And they know they got something coming, you know? So they'll lock it up, which means they'll tell the officer they need protective custody, and they'll take them and put them in a certain part of the jail away from the main line. But then after that point, they'll be considered like no good. They could never fix that once they PC up like that. You know, it's like a life-changing decision for him. And I see some guys that swore they were hard, you know what I mean? PC up, but I seen some other guys that were skinny as hell, like look like you think they were PC up, but they just took whatever they had coming, you know what I mean? So you can't underestimate nobody, you know?
So since being incarcerated, while you were in there, did you see yourself like losing self-identification? Did you start more so identifying as like the number? I think they have numbers in here.
Yeah.
You know, as a number versus yourself, like the.
No, you know, I mean, I always knew who I was and had hopes and dreams to get out and try to keep my eyes focused on that, you know, my vision focused on that. But yeah, to this day, like that number it's integrated in me. Like I know it's 2337-3051, and in the state I know it was H52670. And I haven't been in the state system in a long time, you know. But you never forget that, because when you identify yourself, you always have to use that number. Like when they call you by say your last name is Carter, like when they call it for male Carter, you know, you got to say the last 3 of your number or whatever. So it becomes kind of ingrained in you, you know.
Do you notice like any forms of like stereotyping like still follow you even now that you're like out of that like lifestyle and just like rehabilitated? Do you still notice like, you know, cops?
You think I'm rehabilitated?
You said what?
Man, I'm just playing. I'm semi-rehabilitated, but yeah, all that stuff follows me. I still have nightmares almost every night, like about being locked up. I dreamt about that. It's weird because when I was in jail, I would dream the opposite. When I was locked up, I would dream that I was free, but that I was running from the police. I did something, I don't know what I did, like most of the time, but I would hear the sirens and I'm running through alleys, I'm hiding, I'm trying to get away, I don't want to go back to jail. And then I wake up from the dream, and I look and I'm like, oh, I see the bars, I'm like, oh, I'm still in jail, okay, cool.
Do you like notice that with, like when you go out, like do you notice like cops looking at you longer, or like people like straying away or anything like that? Or?
Yeah, I do. Not all the time. I've actually noticed cops respect me more when they can like tell like, oh, this dude's an OG, you know, he comes from that generation. They're kind of like, they're giving me breaks, you know. But recently they've been acting weird, you know what I mean? Ever since Trump got them all riled up, like they pulled me over the other day in my lowrider for a license, for my license plate having 1 digit wrong, and they like treated me like I committed a felony, you know. And I told him, man, come on, man. If I was a Caucasian dude, would you have done all this? Wouldn't you have just let me correct the problem and go? And they took me out, searched me, sat me on the curb for like an hour. Actually, it was more like 30 minutes because I talked to a sergeant. But, you know, it was unnecessary. Telling me I stole the plates. I said, why the hell would I steal the plates? You know, that car's worth like almost $100,000. Why am I gonna steal the plates for it? Come on, man. You know, I told the dude, exercise your brain, man. I think they didn't like it. I was getting smart with them. But, yeah. But that stuff stays with you. I still get, like if I see a cop car behind me or getting near me, like my heart starts racing. Because I've heard a lot of stories of innocent people in prison, too, that didn't do nothing wrong for phone calls. I know some guys that went to Mexico to visit family, and actually their dad went to Mexico to visit family, and their dad called on the phone and said, hey, you guys don't be doing nothing, take care of the house while I'm gone, this and that. And while he was in Mexico, they got in trouble for some drug stuff, you know. And when the father came back, they got him too, and they said he used code words that he was in Mexico, meaning the connection, you know, and setting something up like that. And because he would not tell on his sons or whatever, they gave him like 20 years, and the man was innocent, bro, you know. So I've seen some cold stuff like that too. Sad, man.
So we got a couple minutes left. Destiny?
While you were in prison, I know that, you know, based on some other like sociological theories, did any of you, like, because of the inhumane treatment, I would say, since like the environment was like terrible, did there ever come a point where people started, like, when I say people, like the other prisoners, including yourself, had started like, I guess riots, like, I guess it would be called like a labor union.
Yeah.
Like the world. Did you all ever?
There's been hunger strikes and stuff like that. I participated in one, but it didn't last too long. Thankfully, 'cause I like to eat. But there's been hunger strikes, and then there's prison riots. There's always prison riots. A lot of them are like, you know, I think it's because of the way you're treated, even though they're focused on groups, political groups against each other, you know, like different gangs and stuff against each other. But I think it really boils down to the overcrowding and the frustration and the tension, you know.
It's a semi-related question with that was mental health. How was it treated or understood in the prison system, and you think it had an impact on the behavior of inmates or yourself, like mental health?
I don't think they really address it, you know. Like somebody that's obviously that's not fit to be around other people, they'll remove him, but it's simply because he's becoming a problem. He's becoming like an issue and causing problems. But other than that, they'll just let him. If he doesn't cause problems, or you know, they'll just let him be. But I know a lot of guys have mental issues in there.
Is it a stigma to take meds or to have therapy?
They take meds, you know, but even so, you can still tell they're a little off, you know. But most of the time, whatever group that guy belongs to, his people will basically they'll take care of him. You know what I mean? Like when I say take care of him, they'll be, you know, they'll know he has an issue and kind of like favor him and help him out and things, you know.
All right. Any last questions? You know, it's 5:20. Anybody have any last minute questions or any final thoughts? Someone asked about your DJing. You know, you DJ. You still doing music? Like,
yeah, I still mess with music.
You look them up on YouTube. Devil
If
Los.
you go on YouTube, there's a show called Hard Luck Show, and I go in about my growing up and stuff like that, about selling dope and all that. But I got some music on there too. Yeah.
What's your YouTube?
Devil and then dash Los. Like.
Yeah, have you ever thought about doing like youth counseling or doing? Because you said you want to do more like positive, constructive.
I like doing positive stuff like that. Yeah. When I first got out, I actually wanted to do like Big Brothers and stuff like that, or reading to blind children, because I like to read a lot, and you know I got a soft spot for babies. So, but because of my record at the time, I couldn't do it. But maybe I could look into it again, you know.
Because there's a lot of in LA, there's a lot of organizations like.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that could be.
I need to look into it again.
Yeah.
Because the little kids, man, if you could stop them from becoming criminals, you know, you could save their life, you know. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your participation, and
Thanks,
see y'all next week. Crazy, man.